Welcome. I'm so excited you're here. I'm sending you lots of hugs and loves. I'm so excited we get to dive into this story about grief and loss and how do we navigate being an entrepreneur through that. And sometimes it's not going to work. And sometimes we need to shift out of it. And Kelly's story is so beautiful. When I was 35, it was the middle of the night and we got a call from my brother and he said that my mom was going to the hospital. She had stopped breathing. And my mom was I just talked to her a couple days ago and she was in her 60s. She was so healthy and doing so well. And so of course we couldn't go back to sleep. And so we were saying prayers and I was just beside myself, And I'm like, surely she's going to be fine. Come on. And then I get the second call from my brother and he said, Mom passed away. And I just lost it, of course. And just feeling that heaviness of losing my mom when I had wanted her there, And it was such a heavy, heavy time. And all of us kids, there are 5 of us in the family. And we all went up to Portland where my dad and my mom were living. And we helped out and we did the funeral plans. And we had lots of friends helping out and bringing over meals. And being the oldest daughter, I was like, okay, I'm going to help my dad. I've got to help my kids. I've got to help my siblings. And I did not do a very good job of any of that. Just the grief was so overwhelming. And I remember we had kind of decided to take turns as siblings staying with my dad and trying to stay with him as long as we could. And so I came back from Portland and was talking to my neighbor, and her father had passed away about a year before my mom did. And she said, if you don't do the work right now of grieving, you're going to have to do the work later. And I look at how much more support there is with grief right now and how I did not support myself. It was really bad. It was hard to do any role. It was hard to be a mom and a wife, I was in the market research space. I think I had to take some time off of everything, honestly, just to even feel like I could get out of bed. And it was such a heavy weight. And we talked today with Kelly Ann Peck about this and going into her loss and her grief and what that looked like physically and emotionally. And she's a 3-time entrepreneur and she's a current founder of Revenue Cadence and how she built that. But it took some different turns that she never thought would come. And she's helped business generate over $60 million in revenue, but she couldn't sell anything during that grief time. And she learned that some deep lessons that have helped her grow and scale. And we're going to get into that because grief never stops. Just because we're female founders, I think about sometime if I was on an island and I had every resource to me and no emotional or physical load, I could totally do this, but that's not real life, And one of the things Kelly and I talked about too was how the over-controller, this inner fear pattern, comes in over and over and over again and teaches or tries to tell us that, hey, the more in control you are, the better things are going to happen. The more in control you're of this situation, the better things are going to happen. I look back on when my mom passed away and I had this, when I went up there to help my dad, I had this punch list of things that I was going to do. I was like, okay, keep me busy, let me do this punch list and I'm sure I'll feel better, and it all was just a lie. It was just terrible. And so the over-controller it's taking away our peace instead of establishing more peace. And I want you to look about in your life, in your business, about where you're trying to control things more. The lies of the controller are believing that control can create a desired outcome. Whatever outcome you want, you fill in the blank. The more you control, the more you're going to get that outcome. But that's a lie. And results and outcome are not something that you manage, especially during grief and especially during really hard times. It can be build up this pressure within you that can explode in different ways. And so if you're in a seated position, we're going to do the over-controller visualization from my app. And if you're in a seated position, you can close down your eyes. If you're not, go ahead, keep driving, keep working, doing what you need to do. And we're going to be investing in peace in these next few minutes. All right, take a deep breath, inhaling and exhaling. Let's let the story begin. There once was a woman who lived beside a gentle river. Every morning she watched it move, sunlight glinting across the surface, small ripples catching the breeze. The river had its own rhythm, sometimes fast, sometimes slow, but always steady. At first, the woman loved the sound, but as the time went on, she found herself wanting to manage it, to make it neater and more predictable. So she began placing stones along the edges, guiding the flow of the river to exactly where she thought it should go. For a while, everything looked perfect. The river curved just right. The banks stayed tidy. It was all under her control. But soon the water grew quiet. The song of the river, the one that used to fill her mornings, had softened into a whisper. She realized that in shaping the river so carefully, she had taken away its life. So one day she walked down to the edge. The air was cool, still, and peaceful, and she began to gently move the stones away, one by one. As she did, the sounds returned. Soft trickles, playful notes, a melody of movement. The river began to dance again, not wildly, not chaotically, just freely. And she saw how beautiful it was when it allowed it to be. From that day, she didn't try to manage the river's path. She simply sat beside it, listening into it, trusting it. Each morning she would place her hands over her heart and whisper, I can let things move. I can let life find a rhythm. I can let all the good come to me. Where have you believed that control has been keeping you safe? How has holding on so tightly ever really protected you? Where could you practice trusting that life will support you? Take another deep breath, inhaling and exhaling. Great job. That's another investment in your peace. I'm so excited that we get to dive into Kelly's story and to all of our stories together of grief and overcoming. And she shares her wisdom of how she got through to the other side. And I can't wait for you to meet Kelly. Kelly, are you there? Take a breath. You've got this. Hey, how's it going? Good. I'm just turning off my music.
No, it's all good. I always like to jump on a couple minutes early. So just to make sure that like all the things work because the technology.
Oh my gosh. Well, and it's like tech is like a 2-year-old little kid. It is so crazy. Like sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It totally is. It is that crazy. Like last week, I had a guest on and we were having some feedback issues and stuff. And I was like, I don't know. I don't know what setting we chose, you know?
Yeah.
So it's so weird.
Yesterday, all of my meetings, they could hear me, but I couldn't hear them.
Oh my gosh.
And like the second meeting I had, the first meeting was with a client and I'm like, hey, just give me your cell number.
Yes.
And I'll just put you on speakerphone and just stay on because we have to review a bunch of stuff. I haven't shut down my computer in 4 weeks, so my computer's probably going F you. Speakers aren't going to work or you're not going to be able to hear people. So luckily that fixed itself. I had my daughter I'm like, yo, get on a chat with me in your room so I can hear you. And I'm like, I don't want you to yell at me. I want you just to talk to me so I hear you through the computer. She's like, what are you doing now? And I said, you cannot ask me for lunch until 1 because I'm going to be on a podcast. And she's like, are you famous? I'm like, oh my gosh, no, I love you. I did all the things in my 20s that I said I wouldn't do. I said I wouldn't move back to Maryland, and I did. But I have a 15-year-old younger brother, and I was this is when I was in Corpus. I was like, I'm out. Peace. See ya. And I only got to come home like 1 time a year because I was in my 20s and, living paycheck to paycheck. So, and I just wanted to see my brother. I mean, that was back in the day where like my mom would record his baseball games on like the VHS tapes.
Yes.
and send them to me in the mail.
Long distance was long distance calling,
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, totally. So I wanted honeymoon kid, and that's what we had.
Oh.
And they handed me Isabella, and I looked at the nurses, and I'm like, I'll be pregnant again this time next year. And they're like, dude, we just handed you one. And I'm like, oh I'm like, yeah, but I am like 36, and I do not want another child at 40. Like, that was my runway. Not that that's a bad thing. It just, for me personally, I was like, if I'm going to do this one more time, because I really dislike being pregnant.
Same.
It was not my jam. And I was really
Same.
lucky. I didn't have postpartum. I didn't have any of that.
Uh-huh.
But I really have enjoyed being a mom.
When you were a kid, you were the most amazing Girl Scout, right? Like, you were the star Girl Scout selling cookies like crazy. Okay. Did like take me back to that.
Yeah. So during our first conversation, because people are like, why do you love selling so much?
Yeah.
And I always think about Girl Scouts. Like my mom put me in brownies in the first grade. And literally I was just an extroverted, really enjoyed doing my thing. And so she put me into Girl Scouts and I loved Girl Scouts. And so that year we got to sell cookies and I thought that was the most amazing thing. And we got to go door to door because, it's back in the 80s. I got to meet new people. And people are excited to see me because I was a Girl Scout and they knew when Girl Scout month was of cookies and like the joy that I got to bring people in the conversations. And I didn't even think about that as selling. It was just fun to me. And when they used to do the back in the day wrapping paper and all of that in the 80s and 90s, I got really excited about getting my box and like looking through all the products. And then I was like, hell yeah, like I want to be in the limo with the pizza party with the principal. But like now with Girl Scouts and like Isabella's never showed interest in doing Girl Scouts, but I would crush that shit with national distribution and a website and I could send that wherever.
But I love everybody.
Yes.
Thin mints all around.
Yes. And they have to be in the freezer. Yes. And the Samoas. I love those. They're so good. And, but like, it just teaches them about entrepreneurship. And I love that aspect of it. And that's where I really, truly believe selling is just a conversation where we think like it's I'm a car salesman or I'm a door-to-door salesman. And like, it's just not that. And people are terrified by it. And I'm like, it's just a conversation to get people to a yes. But people also don't like being told no. So there's that. There's that.
Yes. Well, there is that whole, I think like I learned so much from kids. So I volunteer in our church with our children's congregation.
Yeah.
And I learned so much about we have this singing time and they just belt it out whether their voices are great or not. And, and here I am singing, but I'm using actually my lips because I sing like crap. And so no one wants to hear that. But I feel like as adults, we learn some really bad habits that kids just get right. I never see a Girl Scout that's depressed about selling cookies. It's just so, and everybody loves cookies, it's just so amazing. Did you feel like when you were developing your career, kind of that fun of selling started young,
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I'm a people person. I like having conversations. I like being in a really creative space. I also think that's why I got into hospitality. But I also come from a dad who started his business in 1978, a year before I was born. So I've seen the ups and downs of entrepreneurship when he was buying He used to have a fiberglass business. So there are fiberglass piles that go around the columns of bridges. So the bridges, the fiberglass, he would be very impressed that I know what I'm talking about.
So I was like, wow.
I actually paid attention when I was a kid. But essentially the fiberglass piles get wrapped around the columns and then it helps with the bridge not corroding. So yeah, he's worked on the Golden Gate State Bridge in California, the Bay Bridge in Maryland, which was really cool because we used to go to the beach there when we were growing up. And he's worked in Germany and Switzerland. So it was cool to watch him do those things and see him be very successful. But at the same time, I also remember when I was in college and the business wasn't doing that great. And when I was serving at a restaurant, I had to help pay the rent a couple of times. And, it's just, I've learned that through him as
Yeah.
well. Not that I ever wanted to start a business. That was never
Yeah.
the goal. I mean, back in the 90s when I was going to school, you went to college or you got a job. It wasn't like I'm going
Yes.
to go be an entrepreneur. And that's what I love about now.
Yeah.
Like the amount of funding that kids get with pitch like GMU, George Washington University. I used to go in and do pitch. I'd be a judge for pitch competitions. They have a whole entrepreneurship program. Like they want to fund kids with these creative spaces.
That-
And I just love that that stigma has been taken away from entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
I think it's a really big, incredible thing, but it's also fun to hear other people's stories of how they got into it too, as well.
Yeah. I know my husband's also an entrepreneur. He's
Yep.
also a professor in the sales department at University of North Texas. But back in the day, there was never sales programs. There was never this entrepreneur
Yeah.
focus. So you said you didn't want to get into entrepreneurship. So where did you do?
What's interesting is people who know me now, because I've traveled a bunch. I lived in a bunch of
Yes.
different cities when I was in my 20s. But when I got out of college, when I started college,
Yeah.
I didn't do well in my SATs. I'm not a good test taker. I just didn't know what I wanted to do, and I really wanted to stay in Frederick, Maryland. But I also knew if I stayed in
Wait, Frederick?
yes,
So my husband grew up in Frederick.
in Frederick, Maryland.
Yes. I don't know if you know Monrovia.
Yes.
Are you serious?
Yeah. So we grew. So
Wow.
my husband and I went to Frederick High. You'll have to ask your husband what high school he
Yes.
went to.
I think it was Monrovia. Is Monrovia
He
high
went to
school?
probably Linganore.
Yes, he went to Linganore. Yes.
So we grew up in a town called Urbana.
Yeah.
And Urbana back in the day, like we didn't get cable until we were in the 6th grade because we lived out in the country. So there wasn't a supermarket in Urbana. Urbana is very populated now, like Monrovia and Iamsville and all of those things now. And it's a great place to live. And I loved growing up there. But yeah, I literally loved being there. And I went to community college for 2 years. And I was like, okay, you got 2 years to like figure out what you want to do. My dad made me work for him in his office when I was going to Montgomery College in Rockville, Maryland. And he made me sit behind a desk and answer phones and do invoices. And I learned a lot. I learned a lot how to deal with people. I learned a lot how to deal with difficult clients. I learned a lot of things, but I did not want to sit behind a desk all day. So he made me do that for a year, and because he bought me a car, and I was like, okay. So I, paid my penance
Yes.
of a year.
Yeah.
And I went to go work for Lone Star Steakhouse and Saloon in Frederick. And I absolutely fell in love with it. And I loved being around people. I've always played team sports. And that's the thing that I love about hospitality is it is a team thing. One person cannot do it all. And I love the chaos of it. I loved solving problems. I loved being in the kitchen. I loved being in the front. And I'm like, okay, I think this is really what I want to do. And so I went to Johnson and Wales. I went there in 99 when I was 19. And I was glad that I had had 2 years under my belt with school. My dad loved it because he didn't have to pay university prices for like English 101.
Yeah, seriously.
I know he would high five me still to this day on that. But yeah, I went to Johnson and Wales and he looked at me and he's like, what do you mean you want to go to culinary school? You don't even know how to boil water. And I'm like, that's fair, but I also want to be able to know how to run the back in order to run the front properly. Because the front cannot run without the back of the house, and the back of the house can certainly not run without the front of the house. So
yes, I've been into Gordon Ramsay's shows about restaurants. I'm like, this is crazy. I didn't realize all the intricacies of everything and like how it is a team effort. And I love that. I love teams too. I think that's why I love sports. Because I love like the team, like let's all come together. I love a good unity moment.
Yeah. And I never played an individual sport like ever. It was always a team sport thing. But I always wanted to be class president. I always wanted to be a catcher, or I wanted to be a goalie. I was a goalie in field hockey. I was a catcher in softball. I liked leading in that way because I wasn't shy. And I purposely think it's just a control thing. I've had that problem my whole life. So yeah, Johnson and Wales was the thing. And I have 3 degrees from there. And I have a culinary degree and a food service management degree. And then the economy wasn't really great in 2003. And I'm like, well, screw it. You're already in debt for school. So and you have no children, you have a dog. Let's just keep going. So I did my graduate work up in Providence, Rhode Island. I thought I really wanted to get into nonprofits, and I really loved that aspect of it, but decided not to do that and then got into private clubs. So I worked at Kiowa Island Country Club when I was in college down in Charleston. I used to wait on Dan Marino and his massive amounts of kids, and Jack Welsh had just come out of G&E. So IMELT had just gone in. Michael Jordan's agent. So it's cool to watch Air. I don't know if you've watched that story, but he was really lovely. He lived in Bethesda, Maryland, but they used to go to dinner and they were members of Kiowa Island Country Club. So I was around rich people all the time and those atmospheres and learning how to be a part of those scenarios really helped drive my career. So I've always come from a selling mentality. And then my first business that I was a part of, I literally got into the corporate world because I started having kids. And I mean, I loved weddings in my 20s and my 30s and doing all of that. But at the same time, corporate work is harder to get into. And I would go into nonprofits because DC had a huge gala circuit. And I would look at them instead of going, hey, when's your date? When's this? Like, how many people are you going to have? Because I'm dealing with committees of rich people that all they want to do is pick linens. And I'm like, that's not why you're on the board. You're on the board to literally bring your other rich friends to this event. And I need to know how much money you want to make at this event. And they're like, you're just an event planner. And I'm like, well, no, no event planner wants to be called an event planner. I'll just put that in the universe. But I'm like, no, it goes so much more further than that. And they're like, Kelly, why do you have to know how much money we want to make? And I said, because if I know that you want to make $1 million tonight or 5 million, there's a much different runway to that. And I'm going to literally build an experience and pull every heartstring. I'm going to make them cry. They're going to have this amazing experience and storytelling from the time that they check in to the time that they go into the room. We're going to execute it. And I'm going to teach you how to be a guest at your event and literally get you to have people literally write you bigger fat checks. And they're like, okay, we need to hire you, because that's the pain that keeps them up at night. I was dealing with the pain versus all the other aesthetics. And it was very incredibly gratifying to build those types of experiences and watch them impact. I used to get to watch people raise funds for hospice caring and cancer. And I used to work with this amazing nonprofit that built schools and education systems for India. And I love that. I'm still getting goosebumps talking about it. But that was amazing. But then I started having kids. And I'd been in hospitality for a really long time. And in 2019, I'm like, this just doesn't fill my love tank anymore. And then I felt guilty. And because I had literally hooked my carriage to a company that I was running my book of business through. And I'm like, I want to go out on my own and I don't want to do events anymore.
So when you had during your having your own business, there came a time where you were having a really hard time. There's a lot of things that went sideways in life, right? A lot of things. You had some tragedy happen in your life. Can you tell us about that? What happened?
Yeah. So flash forward a couple of years, I sold Emerson Reese Creative. It was 3 years in business and I sold it. And I sold it to this amazing person who is a mentor and a friend and was my business coach. And I went to go work for her after she bought the business. And in 2024, that was the hardest year for me personally. Like,
Yes.
my marriage was great. My kids were awesome. We were all healthy, like things that
Yeah.
are important. But when we're in like it doesn't
Yeah.
feel like you will find it. Sometimes it's just hard to be grateful when you're really going
Yes.
through it.
Yeah.
My favorite Uncle Brian passed away January of that year. He had early onset Alzheimer's. He got diagnosed at 62. And he literally, Lewy body is a form of, that's what eventually killed him. But he was diagnosed with Lewy body and there's 7 stages and he was like at stage 3. And so he passed away. So I had to like go and say goodbye to him. And then my grandmother passed away. My grandmother was very stubborn, very
Yeah.
independent. She did not want to go into assisted living. And I'm like, guys, like, you've really got to put her into assisted living.
Yes.
Like, and she ended up falling, was like on the ground for
Oh.
like, I don't know, it was like 17 hours. My aunt found her.
Oh
And
my goodness.
all of these, like, she just couldn't get back on her feet or get
Yeah.
well. But the thing that I totally respect about my grandmother is she went out on her own terms. Like, she had a say, she knew what she wanted, and she just wasn't living the life that she wanted to live. And she was
Yes.
she was sick.
Yeah.
And so that happened in April. And internally, I just was not feeling it from a career standpoint.
Yes. Yeah.
And even though things were like absolutely amazing in my career, but I was having all these things going on. And then I'm like, I don't know if this is what you want to do. And then in the turmoil of all of that, my face and my neck started to break out. It would just get red. I'd have hives. My face would puff
Oh.
out. It would itch so bad that it would wake me up in the middle of the night. I would want to rip my skin off. It was really incredibly
Oh.
bad. Yeah. They couldn't figure out what was going on. I went to the allergist. I went to the I think I even told you this. Like, I went to
Yeah.
the dermatologist and they told me that I was allergic to the sun.
Oh my goodness. I know. I was like, that is really a bad answer, you know?
Yeah,
Yes.
like, I'm like, "Okay, we're not gonna come back to you."
And you live in Florida, so you're like, yeah. Who's allergic to the sun? I mean, come on, get a better answer, you know?
Well, and we were still living in Virginia, and my husband's like, "And you wanna move to Florida, the Sunshine State."
Yes.
Like, that's
Yes.
gonna be a problem, Kelly. I'm like,
Yes.
"No, we're still gonna move there." Like, this has been the 11-year plan at this point in time. We're still going. But I was just I couldn't sell. I
Oh my
couldn't
gosh.
I couldn't see the right foot in front of the other. I went to Katie, who bought my business, sent me to a vision coach. And then I felt debilitated by, I teach people how to sell and I can't
Yes.
even sell. I'm a fraud.
Yes.
So
Well,
it
and
was a
that
lot.
grief, yeah, that grief I think comes in physical and emotional ways. Like my mom passed away suddenly in 2011. I was 35
Mm,
and it was so hard. I remember getting this like middle of the night phone call and in a way I was glad that at least she didn't have to go through a lot of pain like what Alzheimer's is and what other like things have to go through. But I remember my neighbor telling me, she said, if you don't grieve and do the work now,
yep.
you will have to do it later.
Yep.
And I was like, I don't want to grieve. I don't want this to be happening, you know, like these favorite people in our lives that we've never known a life without. It's hard to imagine a life
Yes.
without them there, you know, without having that interaction with our kids and going forward in our lives. And it was the worst time. And I there was a bunch of like physical things that just came out of it. So I think, you know, like what your face and neck were breaking out, like just a residual of grief, you know, comes in
Yes.
so many different ways.
Yeah. It was just, it was a lot. And as humans, Like, I didn't love crying. I've had to like teach myself how to be okay with crying because it's a release. I went to a vision coach who was absolutely amazing, and she's like, I mean, Kelly, you've been through a lot and there's been a lot of trauma there, and you just have to, we've got to start working on, again, it's walking entrepreneurs through this. Like, everybody has a choice, but sometimes we don't like the choices that are in front of us, so we just say we don't have a choice. And I'm not trying to be funny about it because I think of myself internally, like that's where I was in 2024.
Yes.
And I remember starting to do that vision work and going, okay, I want to have this much in the bank account because I do not want to be stressed and terrified.
Yeah.
Because in 2024, like literally the on running joke in our house was my husband almost could have claimed me on our taxes. Like legit, I made 20 grand in 2024. I made more in college than I did that year. I mean, it was bad.
Yeah.
And
And was it hard to like, here you go from having a very successful career to having a year that tanked, not being able to sell, like the very thing that you've been good at since you were sold Girl Scout
yeah.
cookies? Like, how did that shift your, I guess, part of the grief and identity that you were feeling?
So for me, I like trying to walk through those pieces and deal with that.
Yeah.
And then trying to walk my kids through, you know, we're not going to be able to go on vacation this summer. And we're like, they wanted to do school activities. They wanted to do certain things, and like having to teach them those life lessons, that was hard too. But we call it situational awareness in our house. I have never sugarcoated it for my kids. And I tell them, I'm like, listen, when I give them an answer and they're like, no, really. And I'm like, do I lie to you? And they're like, no. Like, if you don't want to talk about it, you'll be like, we're tabling that. I'm not having that conversation. Like, one, you're not old enough. One, no, I'm not ready at 7:38 in the morning to have a conversation with you.
Yes.
But I remember Isabella asking me to do some sport or something along those lines. And I was like, we can't. And I told her, I was like, look, life is not always going to be easy. Life is not always going to be fun and happy, go lucky. Like, but I can tell you, Isabella, it's not always going to be this way. It's not going to suck. It's going to suck for some time. I can't tell you it's going to change in 72 hours. But at the same time, it's not always going to be this way. And she was like, okay, mom, I understand that. But it's still hard as a parent telling your kid, like, hey, I am in a sucky part of my life and I can't do the things that I want to do for you right now because the business isn't doing well. And we've gone through in my other businesses ups and downs, but it didn't last for almost a year. Where Jason, my husband, was like, I mean, come on, Kelly, like, something's got to give at this point. Because believe me, like, he doesn't complain when I'm killing it. He would kind of complain, but then I'd have a dip and then I'd go back up. So, but I could not recover in 2024. And I also knew that I needed to step away, but Katie is such an important person in my life.
Your business partner?
Yeah, well, she bought my business. I came in to work for her as a W-2.
Okay.
But like, she was my coach. She helped me balloon Emerson Reese. Then she bought it. Like, and we were very intertwined. Like, I watched her dog Rockstar, that was 100-pound pit bull that was afraid of wind. Like, I loved him. Like, Rockstar was over at our house all the time. And we were both at that spot where we knew it wasn't working, but we had to do something about it. And it was really incredibly hard for us. And, you know, I remember her saying to me, like, Kelly, like, this sucks. We thought this was going to work and it's not. But in entrepreneurship, sometimes, a lot of times, like what we think it's going to be, it's not going to be. And the release of her saying that and being like, hey, like, I got to let you go. We got to part ways.
Yeah.
Because I was towing that line. And And I did not want to leave her, and I didn't want to leave her in a lurch. And we were, again, it was a dying of another thing.
Yes,
Yeah.
another level of grief because it
Yep.
does come in like personal and professional and it all intertwines when you have such a tragedy that
Yeah.
it all goes together and the ripple effect is huge. I mean, it's like like having conversations with our kids about because our businesses have been through that same ups and downs,
Yep.
and having that conversation of, well, Christmas is going to be a little small,
Yep.
and like just the realities of it. My girls, they're both going to be lawyers and stuff. And I
That's really
wonder,
cool.
yeah, I wonder like if they're like, we are not doing entrepreneurship at all, just because there is that up and down, but there also is that amazing part of it that really is also, worth pursuing too and
Yes.
worth having that freedom. What made the difference? Like when you're in that low point, what got you beyond that?
So, and just they are actually going to be entrepreneurs as lawyers because they have to own their own book of business.
Yes. Yeah, actually, true. You're
So
right.
they're going to learn a lot about entrepreneurship. They're just going to own their
Yes.
book of business. Sorry, I had to say that. I'm
Yes.
like,
No,
no,
it's
they actually took those treats for you and your husband and just picked a profession and they're going to go work for a law firm.
yes.
But if they're not booking, they're not making
Yeah,
any money. So
that actually
again,
is true. You're right.
entrepreneurship, full circle there.
Everybody is a salesperson, no matter what they do.
Yes. No,
Yes.
absolutely. So, after that conversation with Katie, I think
Yes.
it was like a huge sigh of relief on both sides of us, even though we
Mhm.
were like really dealing with the grieving process of that.
Yes.
And I then was like, okay, at that point in time, I didn't want to own another business. I
Yeah.
like, and even Katie was like, girl, you gonna go own another business? I'm like, no, that's a hard no for me.
Yeah.
August of 2024. And I was like, I don't know what I want to do. And then I'm thinking, okay, great. We're back at another rebirth. I feel like I've had a rebirth every
Yes.
freaking year since COVID. Like I'm kind of over rebirth, but
Yeah.
again, that's what entrepreneurship is. So,
Yes.
and I love school. I mean, I have 3 degrees, but what's
Yes.
taught me the most is being a business owner.
Yes.
And so after that, it was more of a relief thing. Then it was like, okay, you've literally I have this many bills to pay because I mean, we had to get so incredibly lean that year. It wasn't even funny. And like lean to the point where I'm like, this is not fun. This
Yeah.
sucks. This like it wasn't fun when we had to get lean when we sent our kids to Montessori school and it was more than our mortgage. Like this sucks way worse.
Yes.
I'm like,
You're like,
like
this is the
we're gonna
worst.
pay the
Yes.
bills.
Yes.
And Jason was funding everything, and we lived in a really expensive area. We lived in Virginia. So
Yeah.
because I had already done the vision work, and that was
Mhm.
like such a gift that I got that year, I really started focusing on my vision more than ever, what I had written. And I also just had this turn of in the relief part of that,
Yeah.
okay, you're just going to be open to every opportunity. Even if it's a good one,
Oh.
or if it's a bad one, or it's a I don't know one, but you're just gonna have to be open to it. And I also knew as a salesperson, I had to go and start talking to my biggest cheerleaders, my friends that know and love me. And I also had to have those hot conversations too. Wasn't looking forward to that, but it
Yeah.
was easier and it felt better the more I talked about it. And it's like, and then people started asking me what I want. And I'm like, I don't really know. Like, I know I'm good at sales. I know I'm good at a lot of different things. I'm a fixer. I really
Yeah.
enjoy that. And my husband was like, I want you to be a W-2. And I want you to go work in an office. And I'm like, you're going to hate me working in an office, but I'll
Yes.
totally prove that point to you.
Yes.
Because my kids have always known me from working from home and owning a
Yes.
business. So every sick day, every snow day, every it hits the fan day, unless Jason was told, I don't care what's going on today, you
Yeah.
have to do it. I don't care. Yeah, I cannot
Yes.
step away from this client at this
Yeah.
point in time. So I went to just start having some conversations. I went to go work for a plumbing company that did remodeling and marketing and they wanted me to help them with coaching their plumbers, with sales, because again, plumbers own a book of business like lawyers.
Yes. Yes.
So literally went in and started carving my way with that,
Mhm.
and like was able to cut $90,000 worth of his marketing budget because he was spending it on all the wrong things because he wasn't looking at his numbers. He just wasn't looking at the data. It
Oh.
was just, I need to have this run rate. I'm a $6 million company. I want to grow. But he also told me he wanted to do the hard things, and that wasn't necessarily the case. But I was able to go in and like really work their marketing piece. I had a great team. I really enjoyed the plumbers. And then that particular year in 2025, I got an amazing opportunity from a friend who is like one of my hardcore ride or dies in the hospitality industry, that was like, somebody called her and was like, "Hey, I need a salesperson." And they're like, she's like, "Call Kelly." And so it was an event rental company, and I got to go in and help them build out. They were having massive growth, and they needed
Mhm.
help in their sales department, and I was able to go in and help their VP of revenue really craft that. And
Mhm.
then they needed help in operations, so went and did that and helped build out the product development department.
I think that losing that controlling part of like your
Yes.
destiny, it's like I'm open to what's next. And what's next doesn't have to be the end game, doesn't have to
Yep.
be the dream career that you're like, yes, this is it. It just had to be part of your path. And I feel like as human beings, like I want to control what happens next to me. Like, especially when I'm dealing with grief and things going sideways and things feeling yucky. I feel like the more I can control things, the better it's going to be. And actually, the controller is a sabotaging character in our lives,
Yes.
and it doesn't help us to control things more. It actually takes away from what's supposed to happen next. And I think if you never went to that plumber, you would have never gone down this road that
Yep.
circling back to entrepreneurship. And it's like, it doesn't ever have to look so perfect and be so
Correct.
right aligned to be right there. And like
Yes.
one of the things too that has helped me to have peace during times of grief is looking at my human design. And it's just such a great way to know, like, how do I operate with peace that fits me best? And so, like, human design is like this personality test, like Strength Finders and Enneagram, but it goes down like 10 times level. Like when you're pulling your human design chart,
Yeah, it was really cool.
it was like pages of stuff, like it's all these things. But like what stood out to me is your human design type. And you're a manifesting generator. You're wired to do multiple things all at the same time. Like your day can look kind of chaotic, but we're going to hit all these pockets because you can multitask so well. You're a multitasking giant. And you're also really this innovative pioneer too. You're going to see things and how they can be different than just the status quo. And you really like to have lots of interests, You're like multidimensional as far as I love different interests and all these beautiful things and stuff. And so the strategy really for you as an MG to have more peace is to really connect your energy, because you have this like Energizer Bunny situation that I am so jealous of, because I'm a projector. So my energy comes in ebbs and flows. And then with MS too, I'm like, I have a lot of lows in the energy area. But your strategy for more peace is that when your energy is connecting with something that really lights you up, like this really sparkly, energizing feeling, that's your yes to go towards that thing. So even in grief, even when grief is so common, it's so heavy and there's not a lot of light, you can find that sparkle, that little bit of sparkle that leads you towards your next thing. And with that sparkle, it's also the courage to say yes to that sparkle.
Yes.
And then it's the courage to say no to the things that don't feel like light. Have you had a hard time saying no to things that don't feel like that don't feel like light?
I mean, yes and no.
Yeah.
I think being 10 years into entrepreneurship, and going through this doesn't feel right, but I'm going to still say
Yes.
yes to it
Yes.
anyway.
Totally. Yeah.
I tend not to do that as much now, but hearing the human design reading, I very much have learned in the last 2 years to go towards the things that light me up and that are literally the universe just keeps hitting me with it. And it's like,
Yes.
Kelly, stop saying no when clearly this is what you want to do. You're wasting time and saying no to yourself instead of saying yes to yourself. And that's how Revenue Cadence came about. Like, I literally said yes to the things. And then if I said yes to it and it wasn't a great decision, I said no to it and moved on. And
Yeah.
I had to do that with the business, with the plumbing business, because like me being in an office, like did not work. Proved my point there. And which is, very gratifying.
Right.
But at the same time, it, I didn't have a hard time saying no quicker and faster.
Yeah.
And, we had an agreement last year where I was like, listen, if I make a certain amount of money, I have to go back to having an EIN
Yes.
because it was really fun to
Yeah.
freelance and not business adult. I do
Yeah.
not recommend that for anybody. Literally, I am the chick that formulates, gets a lawyer, has an accountant, an IT guy, and insurance before I want to look at colors and a logo. But
Yes.
because I just want to have sales conversations and have
Yes.
conversations just in general with really cool people.
Yeah.
But being able to go towards more of the light and what you're
Yes.
talking about has helped me. And when the fear comes in, it's easier for me now because with the vision work that I did, I wanted to move to Florida. I wanted to lose weight. I wanted to own a business. I wanted to start speaking again. I wanted to do those things. And that date was dated April 23rd of 2028. I made all
Oh.
of those things happen last year. The only thing that did
Oh.
not happen until this year was my husband got to watch the NFL draft. That's like his pre Super Bowl
Oh.
to football season. He got to watch it with his best friend, who now lives 10 minutes away from us, on his 100-inch screen TV. And again, that was all in my vision, like
Oh, I love
down to
that.
what our house looked like, what things looked like, what I wanted. And 10 years ago,
Yeah.
looking back at that, Kelly, she would have
Yeah.
been like, I don't believe in any of that stuff.
Yes.
And that's why I think the human design piece that you do is so incredibly cool and important, because when we're down in the dumps, the human design
Yeah.
piece, like, I actually have these attributes. I've actually done this.
Yes.
I don't know if I know how to do it again, but I've already proven to myself that I can do it. And I find that because I went through that in 2024, and like last year was my best year in business. It was my best year in business since 2017 when I had to learn that awesome word no when I had a
Yeah.
newborn and a 19-month-old.
Yeah.
So, because that was intense. But
Yeah.
again, it's like, Kelly, you've been here before. You can do the hard things. It's just not letting the fear stifle you. Yeah.
Yeah. And
And
I think that like how we see our human design helps us to navigate these ups and downs in a way that feels really good. So like me navigating, knowing that my energy comes in these ebbs and flows, I don't put so much pressure on myself. And in my app development, I'm like, hey, I know this is going to take a while. I know we're going to hit these different stages. And it actually like makes the whole thing more fun. And like you
yes.
following that sparkle makes the whole thing more fun. And I feel like business can be really, really fun, you know? Now, Kelly, I know that everybody wants to get into your world and talk to you and be your friend because we are great friends now.
Yes.
So, how do they get connected with you?
Sure. So Revenue Cadence is my business. You can find me at revenuecadence.com. You can find me on LinkedIn at Kelly Ann Peck or Revenue Cadence. I love a good phone call text message. So I know that you'll drop that information
Yes.
into the notes. But yeah, you can find me at Revenue Cadence. And again, like Courtney, I feel like we've known each other for years. And thank you for the opportunity. This has been so much fun getting to share. Like it's already over. It's been an hour.
I know. I was like, how did our time go by so? This has been amazing. And I can't wait to hug in person,
Yes,
it's going to be
absolutely.
amazing. Yes. And friends, thank you so much for listening. I see your views and listens all over the world. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. I can't tell you how much special it is to link arms together, to be here together and to have these conversations that are the real, right? The stories behind how have we gotten to where we are, but also what's really made us who we are and what those beautiful lessons that we've learned through our challenges. And so just remember, your peace is the most profitable thing you'll ever invest in. We'll see you next time.